Why don't I use contact sheets? Because on a small format, which I don't use, that's maybe 2 inches or something, not much more, what can you hope to see? On a contact sheet, I can see nothing. Because I have to see the facial expressions. The effect of a mass of people alone is not enough for me. For this series, I used a flash. Almost out of cruelty, a deliberate choice. Seeing them in diffused light didn't bring over the idea of melancholy and sadness. The flash was a touch of cruelty that I added to other cruelties. A truthful cruelty, I'd say, intentional, because it captured the scene I saw in the hospice. I saw it, with a harsh flash which burned. The part that was not old age but rendered it more tragic and sadder. It added black to the darkness and even more shadow to the shadow. I recall the hospice, the first few times I went. For a long time after, I couldn't eat anything. I rejected everything I ate. This one has lost her teeth. The other one's dentures are broken. One of them can't see, the other can't hear. There's all sorts there. There was one sucking away at a piece of meat. She couldn't chew it, so she took it out of her mouth and put it on the table. The one next to her, who couldn't see, was feeling for her food. She took the meat and put it in her mouth. Just watching it was enough to make you sick for months. Then there's cruelty. They're almost paralyzed and can hardly move, but if another old lady stops nearby, they can nudge her and try to make her fall over. They're not all like that, of course, but they can be, for sure. There was one who looked to be dying. She couldn't speak. There was another beside her reciting the rosary. I was taking pictures and someone said, "Can you do that tomorrow morning?" But I was convinced I had to get the shot right away. I could sense that the poor woman wouldn't last the night. When I came back the next morning, the bed was empty. Just another thing engraved in your memory. You remember so much. The photos I took show nothing compared to what I saw in there. They are just an excuse to leave a marker for myself to remind me that I was there. And when I think that I was there, I think of everything I saw. The stench when you go in, it's like the stench of death. I don't know what causes it. I call it the stench of death. So, you don't know what there is here. This whiteness that in other photos expresses life, the will to live, in the hospice meant to me, remove, take away. Almost like someone taking life away from you one day. It burns. The sheet doesn't interest me as such. The material, it was a white, which, if it spread further, covered all the paper. The human being had already disappeared. In this shot of the little old lady and the man, you can see, and this is what I find touching, that they were lovers in real life. They weren't husbands and wife. That, too, means something. They became lovers once more in the hospice. I think she was over 90 already, and he was more or less the same age. Every morning they'd meet up. The old man got some sweets ready. She came to say hello, and he'd give her a sweet, and with her soft little hand, almost as soft as a child's. There was something so gentle about them, something impossible. That's it. They'd talk to me about white streets, silhouettes dressed all in black. So I wanted to shake off this melancholy to find something more spectacular, more imaginary, more dream than reality. And I went to Scano. I went to Scano and I saw some cattle come out of a side street. I didn't know. I had no idea. Black cattle and people dressed in black. At the hospice, the problem was the fear of time ticking away. Here, on the other hand, beauty was born out of time. A kind of suspended time that had never ticked by, that would have changed nothing. The people were the same as centuries before. The whole village formed a single family. You'd see them together. It was something totally different, unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Quite honestly, my feet barely touched the ground. It was as if I was flying in a dream and photographing the scene at the same time. For me, the light was quite magical. All the joy I've had has been with this camera. I could never part with this object, which has never been an object. It really is a nothing kind of camera. It cost 16,000 lira. There's just the lens that a seminarian dropped. As a result, there's not much to say about my camera. It's better not to look at it. It makes people who see it quite depressed. In these shots, also, you find the burned whites, just like in Scano. Now, why the burned whites? Because it wasn't earthly reality, anything we know. I don't know the ground, the fields, or the walls, which interested me. It was their movement. What importance has the ground, with young priests playing and running? The important thing is to be receptive to these people who grew up but remain children forever. To have stripped these priests of the usual values, of the things I was used to seeing. To see them dressed and moving in a certain way with prayer their only concern, and their way of raising their face to heaven, hoping that everything would come to pass. No one knows that I went to Lourdes. I went twice. The first time I was commissioned, but I gave the money back because I wasn't capable of taking the pictures. The first time, there was one, a high-angle shot which isn't here. I don't even know where the negative is. Anyhow, it was a shot taken from high up with a child, his body twisted, screaming like a madman. I was sorry to have missed that, but anyway, it wasn't to be. The second time, though, I took some photos. Not many, to be honest, but a few more because I felt invested too. In other words, I wanted to capture. I'd taken my son with me. So I was moved like the others, and I wanted to grab images that didn't necessarily interest others. Like the memory of the place where I took my son. I didn't calculate it. I calculated nothing because I was in the grip of the pain. I took pictures, that's all. Not a single one of all these people, these millions of people, is thinking of making love to a woman. No one is thinking of undressing a woman. No happy people here. Seeing the farmers gave me an idea. You just have to take a look at their hands, the creases and wrinkles. They made me think of the furrows in the soil. Except that the earth is not horizontal, but vertical. So the image always went towards the heavens. It's more spiritual for me, this idea of sending the picture into the heavens. When the farmer came to a tree, the beast in front, pulling the plow, would describe a curve around the tree. So he adds other signs, and the earth became something magical. I thought I should get even closer to the earth, and by coming close in a plane, you get the right measure to photograph the landscape. And the distance is born when you still see the earth as matter, like man's skin, the earth. And conversely, you see the furrows, these signs, as something familiar, as yours. I remember the times I went to see the farmer. He'd roll the pasta into a circle, slice it, and spread it out the tagliatelle. Anyway, all these signs from the sky, I saw them again. Then there were the ashes where they put potatoes. There were hot ashes, and they put the potatoes underneath, and this earth that they enlarged with signs. I set out to portray the farmer on the land. There are some where you can see, for instance, a dead man's face. But you only see the faces because you start from the farmer's stables, kitchen, staircases, the same staircases you walk up yourself. And then the onions hanging on the wall, or the garlic, and I don't know what creating signs. To my mind, these are signs that I found and learned to read inside and around the farmer's house. I saw a camera in a shop for 800 liras. It was a Comet, the cheapest there is. I bought it on an impulse, even though it was like a toy for me. And on Christmas Day, I went down to the sea without thinking about what I was going to photograph. I went right down to the water, with the waves crashing in, one leg frozen and soaked. As I watched the waves move, it occurred to me that if I moved the camera, I would stop the wave and make the sand move, which for me was quite magical, given that I understand nothing about that kind of thing.